Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for Know-How is brought to you by CacheFly at CacheFly.com.
This episode of Know-How is brought to you by SmartThings. SmartThings lets you monitor, control, and automate your home from wherever you are using your smartphone. Right now, SmartThings is offering Know-How listeners 10% off any home security or solution kit and get free shipping in the United States when you go to smartthings.com/twit and use the offer code TWIT at checkout. On this episode of Know-How, he's going to be talking all about racing.
Yes.
Going around a track. We've got some drones because, well, we got to talk about your feedback, your questions, our answers. Oh, and networking. That's right. Know-How is next. Welcome to Know-How. It's the Twitch show where we build, bend, break, and upgrade. I'm Father Robert Ballecer.
And I'm Brian Burnett.
And for the next 40 to 50 minutes or so,
give or take. I'm feeling a little rusty today. So
yeah, you were gone. But we are going to give you some of the projects that we've been working on the last couple of weeks so that you can take them home and geek out on your own. But first, Brian.
Yes?
You abandoned us.
I was gone last week. Apparently you did have someone fill in for me.
Yes, actually, Alex, do you have
Brian?
any footage of the person who filled in for Brian
I sure
last
do.
week? Yeah, you know, he was actually pretty good.
Yeah?
Yeah, much better than
usual. Yeah,
Yeah,
I appreciate that.
But
I was
yeah,
sitting in my bedroom with my laptop and I was playing Titanfall. Oh, perfect.
Much better.
Okay,
It was
yeah.
much better.
I play Titanfall a lot,
yeah,
apparently.
I know it is. No, but let's talk about where you went, because you didn't just go on vacation. You were actually working, and you were working an event that was actually pretty cool.
It was amazing. Yeah, I went to Daytona, Florida, where they host the 24-hour endurance race. And so it was pretty crazy. It was
now, whenever you hear about these endurance races, like 24 hours of blah,
yeah.
Is it one driver, or do they have can they?
They have a
switch
team.
drivers? Okay,
so this is it's very complicated, and some of it is still confusing to me. But they have 4 classes. So they have like a prototype class, another prototype class underneath that, and then a GT class, and then a GT Le Mans class. And all those are just broken down into, these are really, really fast race cars. These are still pretty fast race cars. These are like cars that you could buy on the street,
like
but they're souped up.
with a turbocharger.
Yeah, I think like the regulations is they have to be V8s. But the Aston Martin team that I was following, I was doing video for them. They're a local Petaluma team. They're called TRG, and they have a V12 Aston Martin that they race.
So I know that when they do staggered races for like cycling or running, they let the slow people go first, and then they let like the meat. In other words, it's try to stagger them out so that you don't get a lot of passing.
They stagger the start.
Okay.
But then after that, for the next part of the race,
they're all on the track at the same time.
They're all going at the same time.
So if you're in one of the unlimited classes or the super high classes, you're
like
passing
crazy.
everybody. Oh, that's dangerous.
But it's a race, but it's kind of like an extended demolition derby. So
that doesn't sound good.
No. So the strategy is to survive till about the last 2 hours, and then it becomes like really intense chess match. And as the race goes along, you have to switch out racers. You'll get like a limited number of fuel and tires changed, and there's a minimum maximum for how long a driver can be in the car. Ooh. So yeah, the rules get kind of complicated, and I think that works against the race a little bit. But once you're out there and you see the cars going around, and all the cars have to have headlights too, obviously, because they race at night. So it's one of the coolest things I've ever been able to experience.
Now, you also had some video and photos that you could be throwing up right now if you were behind the TV desk.
Yes. So this was, I saved a lot of my photos for G+, and I used like the story feature, but this, the equipment they have at these races is crazy. They have these like mobile command centers in the pits that have TVs linked to all the cars showing like where they are on the track. They have all the different cameras from inside the car, outside the car.
So they do like real-time telemetry.
They do real-time telemetry. They have radios to the drivers so they can talk to the drivers and tell them, okay, you need to come in the next 10 minutes, like your time's coming up. And this, that's me with a big
wait,
grin.
whoa, wait. Go back to that picture, Alex, because
How would I get that shot?
that's like way further than your arm.
I totally had someone take that for me. Called a selfie stick.
Oh my goodness. Actually, I've heard that Alex is a big fan of selfie sticks. He's been telling
He
everyone.
loves selfie sticks. It's either
what we
someone
get.
holding that camera on a selfie stick over there.
In fact, we're replacing everyone in Twit with the selfie stick. So it'll just be a host of the selfie stick.
I used the selfie stick twice, and I made sure nobody was really around me when I did. But the pictures came out really cool, so I liked it.
They made me Karsten made me review a selfie stick because I complained about selfie sticks at CES. I'm like, oh my god, these are so stupid. So we get back, first thing he gives me is a selfie stick.
Are we gonna do a know-how on selfie sticks?
No, we're not.
But yeah, so I got like
wow, you were really in there.
I was, yeah. I had the media pass, so pretty much a dream come true. Going around checking out all the pit stops and stuff. Coffee was my best friend around the 18-hour mark for the race, because the race is 24 hours, but I was up for about 36 hours.
Wow.
Yeah, and these guys they're up all night, but they practice changing the tires and getting the drivers in and out as fast as they can, because that's time being used up.
But this is not like NASCAR or F1 where like the pit stops can be measured in, under 20 seconds or so.
No,
this was get it right because your driver's going to be on the track for a while.
Right. They definitely want to get it right. It's not as fast as like F1 or something like that, but they definitely are quicker than I would ever be trying to carry those tires around.
Yeah, how much do those weigh, by the way?
They're lighter than your average, car rim, but they're still pretty heavy. I would say about like 40 pounds or so, 40, 50 pounds with the tire and everything on it.
I'm surprised you didn't get a quadcopter out on this field. That would be
if I could have gone a quadcopter out there,
footage.
I totally would have. It would have been neat. But yeah, that was up on top of the racetrack looking down. And I did do a few time lapses. I think I forgot to tell Alex that I put the videos in the Dropbox. But
yes, you did forget to tell me that.
We can always bring those back in.
I was gonna say, if you watched prior episodes of Know How when we did the GoPro time lapse stuff, it came in handy having the GoPro around, because
you actually caught a crash. You were filming as a crash occurred on one of the turns.
Yes, because since it's a 24-hour race, the broadcast usually stops, when it gets into the later hours. So this was around 2:30 in the morning, and because I was having such a good time, I didn't stop videotaping.
That's our car. That's your car.
That's the Aston Martin car that I was following. I was trying to get the brake discs glowing, and I didn't even notice that these two Porsches crashed into each other.
Those were both Porsches? Were they the same
team?
Oh no!
That's the first rule of this race.
Out your teammate.
If you're gonna crash, you don't take out your teammate.
Oh my goodness.
So both those cars were in the running for the race, and they just totally
Were they out after that?
They got back into the race. The teams that work at this race are pretty amazing putting cars back together.
Wow.
So they did get back out on the racetrack, but a little controversy after that was that nobody thought there was footage of that crash. So the Porsche guys blamed the Aston Martin team for the crash.
It's like, whoa.
And then, so yeah, the Kevin Buckler, the owner of the team, showed the video to the Porsche team, and they're like, oh. And so it got picked up on Fox, and I think those drivers might not be on the team anymore. But we'll see.
Wow, that's harsh. But yeah, that is kind of like the first rule of racing: don't take out your teammate.
Right. And so this is a view from the pits, and it's just all the activity going on. They have all the TV screens up and stuff. So I'm gonna try and see if I can get Kevin to come in and describe some of the stuff on his cars, because
the tech that goes into these cars is amazing.
It is really cool.
You think that your car is tricked out, but I mean, just like the real-time telemetry stuff, so they can tell exactly what your engine's doing, temperatures, how the suspension is running, because they use all that, right?
Right.
Every time you come in, they can adjust your car.
Yes, and they have profiles for each driver, and they can show like, oh, on this corner you use the brakes about 80%. If comparing to the previous driver, you can push that up about 5%. So just get on it a little bit more when you get into turn 9 and stuff.
That's just too much. I just like to keep it on the road.
So it was a lot of fun. This was the view from the top with the time lapse from the GoPro.
I've heard Daytona is sort of like the wonderland for racing aficionados.
It was really neat.
Something for everyone.
I hadn't really watched this race before. I'd heard of it, but after having been at it, I hope it gets more popular, because it's some of the best racing I've ever
they do one here
at
Sonoma. Yeah.
Oh.
It's the 24 Hours of Lemons.
Oh, the lemons.
So your car
We should
complete
do
with
that.
all of your modifications can cost no more than $600.
Yeah, yeah. They have some crazy
so there's
looking
like
cars out
duct
there.
tape. You have like a large part of the race is run at like 30 miles an hour because everyone's falling apart.
Yeah, yeah. You got to watch out for bumpers on the track.
Like, yeah,
and stuff,
the one thing that they'll let you buy is a roll cage. So you put a roll cage in the car.
Safety first.
Because safety first. But everything, and like bald tires. You have people running on rims.
I had a couple of friends do that race at Thunder Hill here in California, and the stories they had were pretty scary.
That's something we actually could probably do. We can't sponsor a $200,000 race car, but we could do a $600 clunker.
We should put a team together. Get like Patrick Norton, you, me, and maybe Alex.
Oh no, Tim Stevens.
Oh, Tim, yeah.
Stevens.
And
okay, that's our. There we go.
A Lemons.
I will do the. I will bless things. You will do the mechanical stuff with Patrick.
Sure.
And Tim will.
We'll have Greg do the painting for us.
There we go.
Yeah.
And I could go drive my Saturn.
No. Alex will be there with a selfie
Saturn.
stick, and he'll just walk around taking footage.
He's required to only use the selfie stick.
All right, that's enough of racing. Let's go ahead and jump into some of your feedback, some of your questions. Now remember, we pull these. I'm sorry. Could you say that again, Brian? Because that sounded way better.
It's neat.
Yeah.
Is it neat?
It is.
I think it's neat.
It's pretty good.
Yeah.
But we had some of your questions from our G Plus group. Don't forget to go to Google Plus and look for the Know How group because that's where you get your questions into the show. Now, we've got this first one from a man who needs more quad.
More, spelled M-O-A-R. If I purchase the individual components for a quad based on the Hobby King FPV 250, would either the Multi-Star Elite 2204 2300 kV or the RTF Mini Motor X2204 with the 2300 kV Advanced Light Series be a good upgrade to consider? I'm also looking at the RTF. Man, these are a lot of numbers in here. RTF 12A Fire Red instead of the Afro ESC. Considering the current draw/thrust increase, I assume that I would need an upgrade to a battery of 2200 milliamp range to maintain reasonable flight times.
Great question, and this is exactly what we were hoping for from our know-it-alls, because what he's talking about is taking the frame that we built. So this is that FPV 250 kit from Hobby King. It's nice. We both have been flying these.
It's quick.
They're responsive.
It's a good step up from the trainer quad that we've been using.
And that's what you want. You start with the trainer, which is nice and easy to fly. You move to something like this, which is not that expensive, and it's actually pretty forgiving. You know, it is definitely more zipper than the trainer, but it's, you know, it's not crazy. He now wants to move from something like this to something with a bit more oomph. Now, the great thing is that he can do that without going crazy. This is actually the exact same frame. If you notice, it's the Daytona 250 frame. I've added a little cage for the long frame so that I can add like FPV components and have a bit more space for the transmitter, for my goggles, and for the camera and a gimbal on top. But these are exactly the motors that he was talking about. If you go to the overhead shot, Alex.
Motors are huge.
Yeah, well, we probably should have used a more zoomed in view. I don't know if you can see this, but if you use the digital zoom here, you could look at the FPV 250 motor, and then you can look at the Multi-Star motor, this 2204 2300 kV. The cans are just ridiculously larger. I mean, this is what a serious motor looks like compared to a hobbyist motor. Let me move that into frame. There we go. Yeah. Okay. Now, it's not just the size of the motor. Along with that size increase comes a massive amount of extra power. The 1704 motors that run on the Hobby King FPV 250, which is what we've been playing with, they can generate about 190 grams of thrust.
Yeah.
Which is not bad because the craft only weighs about 300 grams. So you put 4 of those together, and you've got a decent thrust to weight ratio.
Power to weight ratio is good.
This thing generates a kilogram of thrust. So, and the frame still only weighs about 400 grams. So, yeah, it's a ridiculous amount of power.
That's the hot rod of quads right there.
Yeah, I mean, we could get crazier than this. We could get way crazier than this, but we don't need to because it's such a small frame. It's just going to move.
You're going to lose sight of it before you are even able to play with it too much.
That's the issue. If you hit the gas on this thing, it's gone.
Yeah.
So you better know what you're doing because otherwise you've just put it through someone's house. Now, there are a couple of things that you need to consider before you move to an upgrade like this. You can use the same frame. This is actually a fantastic ballistic frame. It's super strong. It's sustained a lot of impacts.
This is a required modification that you've made here.
Right.
Though.
We talked about this the other week. This is a way to make sure that the legs stay on.
A little zip tie on there.
Yeah, but you will need to upgrade some of the components in order to make this work. Let's bring it back a bit, because we talked about this at the beginning of our quadcopter series about power draw. You see, the RTF 2204, that's the ready-to-fly 2204 2300 kV motor, it's going to draw a maximum of about 15 amps. You try to run that through a 12-amp electronic speed controller, and you're going to end up with a fire.
Okay.
And now you would be able to get away with it most of the time, because most of the time you're not jamming the throttle. But if you ever did like a prolonged burst of power, those things would just heat up and eventually they'd fry.
Yeah.
That's not good. So you're going to want to move up to a 20 amp, or you can move up to a 30 amp. Now this is a ready to fly. This is a 20 amp ESC, and this is a 30 amp ESC. If you go to the overhead, Alex, you can see they're actually the same size. The 20 amp has smaller gauge wire because it doesn't require as much current. But if they're the same size and the same weight, why not move to the 30 amp instead and just get yourself a little extra headroom? Because I've said several times, I look at this stuff like a Lego kit, right?
You want to keep building up on it.
Right, so I'm probably going to add an additional motor. Also, it just gives me some extra headroom. And the 30 amp is actually only $2 more. It's $10 versus $8.
Okay.
Yeah, so go ahead and, yeah, exactly, those are the two. So we've got a 20 amp and a 30 amp. Go ahead and get yourself a 30 amp, and you're not going to have to worry about that anymore. But there is another problem, and again, we talked about this at the beginning of the quad series, and that's the battery. If the motors are pulling up to 15 amps each, and I now have electronic speed controllers that can provide up to 15 amps each, it means I need a battery that can provide up to 60 amps of current. And unfortunately, a lot of these will not cut it.
So, yeah, and does that, you're going to have to get a bigger battery too, which is going to be added weight, or?
Well, added weight, which is fine, but I mean, you're looking, this is where the C rating comes in handy. When we were building the FPV 250, we didn't care about the C rating. Remember, the C rating is the discharge rating. It's how fast the battery can give you the power that's inside, right? Right. Well, we went with like a 20C rating. That's fine for a hobby king because these motors only pull 50 watts each.
These are little baby motors.
They're baby motors. And they're not even going to stress the tiny little ones with the 10C rating.
Right.
But when you start moving up to these monster motors, you're going to want to start looking at, first of all, the 4-cell, not the 3-cell, but the 4-cell batteries. So these are zippy 4 cells. They're going to run at 14.8 volts versus 11.1 volts for this 3-cell. So, you know, more voltage means it turns faster, right?
Right.
More, and it's turning faster, which means it's going to be drawing more current. This one is only rated for 20C. 20C at 1600, we do the multiplication there, and I don't actually have enough amps to supply the ESC. I will blow the battery if I go full throttle.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what I would suggest is I don't want to do all the math over again,
right?
Because that's silly.
A lot of math.
But go back to the episode of Know How where we actually talked about sizing out your quad, because once you start upgrading, you are going to have to look at that in order to buy the right battery. Like for example, right now I'm not running this because I don't have a battery that can provide enough amps. So I'm buying a new 4-cell battery that provides 5,800 milliamp hours and can do a 40C discharge. That should be fine.
Are those any more expensive than some of these batteries
that
you
more
have?
Expensive. Yeah. It's just like anything in the hobby. As you go to higher performance parts, you're going to be paying more.
You're going to race gas.
Yeah. So I could get like these 3-cell batteries. I can get those for, you know, what, $15. These 4-cell high performance packs are going to start costing you a little bit more.
Oh, down the rabbit hole we go.
Yeah, but I mean that's part of the hobby, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Like
well, yeah, and especially if you've started out with a frame and you've got those motors, and then you want to build up from there. You know, it's just a little incremental over time. It's not one giant, you know, purchase.
Now, okay, we didn't do a quadcopter build because we promised we wouldn't do one in January, and we actually wanted to give you a little something else. This is a question that we've been getting a lot. It was posted once in our G Plus group, but I've received emails about this at least once a week for the last 3 months, which is strange because I didn't expect to run into this problem. But we've got users who want bigger networks.
Wow. Yeah, this comes from Boston Cadet. And in his small office, there will be more than 256 devices connected to the network. Jeez. He wants to know how to set up his network so the devices can connect to the same network and talk to each other. He wants to assign the IPs and when will there be more than 256 devices, so there will not be able to get the 192.168.1 IP.
Yeah.
Will the devices be able to talk to each other? And on the flip side, can he set up his network with just IP management so that devices cannot talk to each other, or at least not directly? Yeah, he wants a quick overview of how to set up the internal network if there will be 257 devices or if there are 10,000 devices in theory.
Let's talk a little bit about IP networking because we haven't really gone in depth. I think we can use a little lesson here. Essentially, what we're going to be talking about now is subnetting. Subnetting is quite simply taking a large IP network and dividing it into smaller pieces, and that's what we're going to have to do here. He's talking about a Class C restriction. So most home devices, even small office devices, are restricted to what's called a Class C. So think about an IPv4 address. Remember, like 192.168.0.1.
Yeah.
Okay. That's actually a 32-bit address.
Okay.
Okay. And a 32-bit address, which is 32-bit routing prefix, has, what is it, 4,294,967,296 possibilities.
So a lot. Yeah.
There's a lot, but we already know that we've run out of IPv4 addresses because a large chunk of that is reserved or used for other purposes, et cetera, et cetera. So we're moving to IPv6 now, but most of our networks at home or in the office are still running IPv4.
Okay.
Okay. Now, here's the issue. That Class C, that's that last octet. So 192.168.1. blank. That blank part is limited to 256 possible values, right? Because it's an 8-bit address. 2 to the power of 8 is 256.
Makes sense.
Okay. The problem is, of the 256, there's 2 addresses that we cannot use. We cannot use 256, and we can't use 1.
Oh, okay.
Because or 255 and 1, because those addresses are the broadcast address. One's the broadcast, and one's the network address. So there's really 254 possible devices that we can have on a network. And that's what most of these home routers say that they're limited to. You cannot have more than 254 devices.
I can't imagine having more than that at home.
But in reality, the cutoff comes way before that. Most of those home routers don't actually have enough memory or processing power to have more than about 100 devices on at any given time before they start tipping over.
I feel like the router I have at home struggles with the mobile phones, the 2 Xboxes, the 3 computers all hooked up at the same time as it is. So.
Now let's do some total network geek stuff. That Class C that we've been talking about, that's also known as a /24. The reason why it's a /24 is, and this is the easiest way for you to remember, IP routing is a 32-bit address, right? A /24 means the first 24 bits are reserved for the network prefix. You can't change it. That's not touchable by you. And the last 8 you can change, the last 256 addresses, right? If you wanted more, you could actually move to what's called a /23, which means the first 23 bits are reserved for the network prefix.
And that gives you more.
It gives you 9. And so you add one more, you multiply it once more by 2, and instead of 256 possible addresses, you now have 512 possible addresses.
Okay.
Okay, and you can keep going and going and going. That's how they divide the internet. Well, whenever you talk to someone who's running an enterprise class network, and they tell you I have a /24, it means that they've got a network that can have 256 possible addresses.
And if they say /23...
Right, 512. Or if they tell you I have a /16s, it means they have a possibility of 65,536 different usable address spaces.
So this would be for like a large corporation or
something like
corporation.
Like Interop actually had 2 /A's. Class A's.
Sorry. Oh, Class A.
Class A's /8s.
/8.
Ridiculously large. That was the early day of the internet, and they were just handing them out. They're like, yeah, here you go. You can have some.
And you get a
exactly.
/A. And you get a /A.
Now, what he's talking about is when you have one of those low-end routers or SMB routers, and you get more than that number of devices, most of the time you can't add more unless you actually know how to subnet properly.
Okay.
Right? Because talking from one subnet to the other requires a little higher end router. All enterprise class routers can subdivide a network and then have devices talk between them, but most home routers and low-cost SMB routers cannot, because they just assume you're not going to have more than 254 addresses.
Right. Yeah, who would?
Who would? There is a way to do it, though. There is a way to do it,
Okay.
and we're actually gonna. I'm gonna hint at it this time because I actually do want this to be a full episode of know-how. You can use something like this. So we've got the internet, we've got the WAN address. So this is my one real address, right?
That-
the routable address.
Yeah, that's the one that all the devices are going out to the internet with.
And then
yeah.
this is my primary router. So the 192.168.1.1. And right now I'm assuming that you're running something like DDWRT or a higher end home router that does what's called static routes.
So not the default firmware.
It's not. It's not the default firmware. Yeah, unless it's really good default firmware, it's not the default firmware. I can take two other routers, like those Linksys or DDWRT enabled routers, and I can hook them up to the 192.168.1.1, and it'll be a NAT of a NAT. It's not good, but it'll still work. All of these computers will be able to see the internet. All of these computers will be able to see the computers here. However, the computers over here will not be able to see the computers over here, vice versa, and the computers here will not be able to see the computers there. That's not ideal.
Right.
Okay. But what I can do, and Alex, if you go ahead and go to that link, there's a cheat sheet here for using DDWRT. Scroll down towards the bottom. It'll actually show a graphic of what this is going to look like. There we go, right there. So I can set static routes in those two additional routers so that the router of 192.168.1.1 is aware of the devices behind these two, and the devices behind these two will be aware of the devices that this is connected to, and therefore they'll be aware of all the devices between those networks.
So they'll all be able to talk to each other.
Right. This is not ideal. It's really not ideal because, again, unless that router has enough firepower and enough horsepower, you're going to start to slow down your routing, and everyone's going to feel the pain.
Isn't this similar to bridging your network?
Yeah, that's all that this is. Okay. So the default mode on routers is they don't do a bridge, they do what's called a NAT.
Right.
They're taking one address and they're translating it to all the addresses inside the network, the non-routable addresses. Essentially what doing static routes will do is it enables a bridge between this router, and this router, and now those routers know that they can transfer traffic back and forth.
Okay, but so, because you don't want NAT on NAT. You don't want your NATs in your NAT. That's bad.
Yeah.
But there is a setting in DDR-WRT where you make it like a remote broadcast router, right?
Yeah, that's a little bit different. I mean, that's just basically turning it into like a bridged AP.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like turning it into a piece of cord.
Like just extending the router.
Just an access point. Right.
Okay.
This is a bit more technical. I wanted to let the user know that there's a way to do it, but honestly, the best way to do it is just to buy a router that can support
this
multiple
sort of thing.
Yeah, multiple Class Cs.
Do you have one off the top of your head that you'd recommend?
The one that I use is the Interisys D2. It's a switch. It's an enterprise class switch, but that thing costs $4,000.
Man.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I guess if you're doing this sort of thing and you want to do it right,
You want to do it right. Yeah.
If it's for business.
I'm all about business.
Yeah, but for your house, I wouldn't drop $4,000 on something for my house.
One more. We got one more.
Okay. Oh, all right. One more feedback. He wants to help me. He wants to save his battery. Mark Newman asks, using the FPV250 build from our show and the FlySky T6 radio, what is the best way to know when the battery is running low? I want to make sure I don't drain the LiPo batteries beyond the safe point. Good question.
Easiest way to know is, so when the craft falls out of the sky, you shouldn't use those.
Yeah, it might be a little
let's
too
move
late
on.
at that point.
No. Okay, good. This is a very good question.
Yeah.
Because it's kind of a guessing game. I kind of know. I feel it when my craft is getting low batteries.
Sluggish.
It starts getting sluggish. Yeah. But other people will use timers. Timers are still not perfect because depending on how you're flying the quad, if you're aggressive or if you're just loitering, the flight time could differ by minutes.
Yeah.
So there are devices, and we've actually got a couple right here.
Ooh.
These are what I use on my quads. So this is what I use on the Hobby King. This right here, this is just a little bit of an alarm. I put some bullet connectors on the edge here so it can hook up into the power distribution block of my, my FPV250. This will warn me when the battery starts getting low. When the cells start approaching 3 volts, because you don't want to go below 3 volts, this will say, hey, you got to stop flying. And it's a really loud buzzer, and it'll actually start to blink, and then I know to land it. I know I have about 30 seconds to land it.
That's what that is.
That's what that is, right? Yeah, this is a slightly different one. This actually plugs straight into the balance connector on your battery. And this will let you know exactly what each cell is doing. Like, for example, let me do this here. Make sure to plug positive, positive, negative, and negative, otherwise there will be a fire. But when I do this,
okay,
so it sparks up, and now, if you look at it, it's giving me all green. It's telling me the 3 cells on my battery
are all charged up.
Are all good.
Cool.
When I start to see, I will, while flying, because I have this underneath my craft, I will start to see these start to turn red. As they turn red, it means that cell is starting to get exhausted. You got to bring it down. And finally, when they approach like 3.1 volts, I'll start getting a constant beeping, and it will say, bring it down.
I don't think you gave me one of those for my quad.
I didn't, because I thought it'd be funny if you crashed.
Which has happened. I was going to say, the only way I know the battery's about to die is I give it throttle and it goes...
There is one other way that both you and I can do, because we both use these. This is the KK215 board. If you look at it, right here, there's a connector it's red. It's red.
Yeah,
it says
it's
BAT.
a 2-prong.
Right, it's a 2-prong. You can actually give that a lead to the positive terminal of your battery, so on your power distribution board. And the KK itself will measure the voltage of your battery, and there's an alarm on board that will tell you when that battery starts to get low.
Oh, okay.
So,
well, I guess the hope is then that you're not flying so far away that you can't hear the beeping.
Yeah, I mean, that's why experienced pilots, I fly half the pack and I bring it back.
Yeah, that's kind of what I've been doing.
There's no reason for me to fly more. I've got a lot of packs, and honestly, like the last half of a pack, I've lost all the speed. I've lost all the zippiness. So bring it back, give it a fresh battery, I'm good to go.
Yeah, I've been playing it a little bit safe rather than sorry. I bring it back after I've had a good amount of fun and then just switch out the batteries.
And that is the way that you puff up the batteries. So
by draining it all the way?
If you go down below 3 volts too many times, you'll see the cells just start to expand, and then it's useless because the internal resistance has increased so much, it will just never deliver the power that it used to.
So you're just killing the battery.
Right.
And then does it become dangerous at that point? Like, will the battery...
Not unless you overcharge it.
Oh, overcharge. Okay.
I tried to scare people in that earlier episode because I wanted people to be scared and not do that to their batteries.
Scared me.
Yeah, but I mean, unless you puncture the pack or deliberately overcharge it, it shouldn't explode. It may smoke, but it shouldn't explode.
Okay. Cool. As long as I survive.
Yeah. Now, actually, you know, Alex, we were going to have an ad right now, but I think we're going to wait until after the break because that's a better time to do it. You've heard a little bit about augmented reality, right?
Yes, I have.
It's been kind of cool. The last week we had Microsoft getting their groove on.
Yes, and Jason Clanthis got the Samsung VR headset, and I pretty much just sat in the chair downstairs doing this like for a half an hour, looking around space.
Well, we actually had a chance at CES to take a look at Epson's AR, augmented reality, and although it doesn't have holograms like the Hololens from Microsoft, Alex, why don't you go ahead and let the folks see what we saw? Virtual reality is one thing, but augmented reality is another. And here at Epson, they're trying to give you the best in augmented reality with the Move Aereo. I'm standing next to Mike, who's going to tell us a little bit about their new dev kit and what they're trying to do to bring the world of AR to you. Mike, what is this?
So what we have is the Move Aereo BT200. Essentially, this is an augmented reality glasses platform. We actually announced it last year at CES and launched it in April, so it's been on the market for about 9 months. So here at CES 2015, we really want to show off everything that's happened in the developer kind of ecosystem and building out this whole group of software applications and just various use cases for the product. So what it is, Pico projectors, it produces this very large virtual screen that floats in front of you, and then accompanies a bevy of sensors, so accelerometer, gyro, IMU. All this will enable you to do positional head tracking, and also, of course, do a lot of other important things that we haven't even discovered yet.
One of the things that I saw when I tested it was it saw a QR code, and because it saw the QR code, it was able to scan it, and then it brought a menu up around the QR code that you could interact with. And I think that's one of those applications that's going to be a game changer. If you're walking down a street and it recognizes something that it should, and suddenly you've got options. Now, what kind of tech do you need to make that happen? Because there was no lag. It happened almost instantaneously. And as I moved my head, everything looked rock solid. It didn't look like an overlay. It looked like someone had painted it on the wall.
So right now, I mean, in terms of doing it out in the wild, so to speak. So like you said, out in public. You just need a camera strong enough or a marker big enough to get the detection. So for things like QR codes, that's fairly easy to do. The harder thing is doing full-on object recognition or, for example, facial recognition, things like that. That's where you need a stronger camera. That's where you need more processing power. Right now, the glasses are a little big for the everyday consumer. It's much more of a developer platform. But we're also looking at all the enterprise, and that's where we're getting a lot of interest. Because even though this is about 88 grams, it's light enough for a technician to wear while they have their hard hat on and their safety helmet. And then they can do what you're also referring to. They can see real-world objects like an engine or an airplane part, and then overlay instructions or content on top of it to help them do their job.
That's next level stuff. I mean, can you imagine if you're an IT person and you walk into a server room, and because they're all QR coded, it'll automatically tell you this is what this server is, this is what this server is. Or like you're an aircraft technician, it sees an engine, it gives you an overlay of where everything should be. That's the kind of tech that I want to see. But as you mentioned, you're going to need developers. So what are you doing to attract developers to this platform?
So really building out the entire developer program, and for Epson this was a first. You know, most people associate Epson with printers or projectors, but they've long made a lot of sensors, and now they're just using the technology and building products that are developer centered. So as a result, we're doing things like developer contests. Right here we actually have a little brochure, I'll let you zoom in on that. It's $200 off the glasses, and you have up to $10,000 in prizes for the top apps that people develop on the product. Also importantly, we like to bring people to CES. So everyone knows it's not completely cheap to come here and get a big booth. So we want to make it all about the developers, let them tell their stories to the press, let them tell their stories to everyone else. And for example, one of the companies over there launched their Kickstarter 2 days ago while they were here in the booth, giving them the exposure they need to have a big hardware manufacturer behind them, with them providing the awesome and compelling use cases from the software side.
Mike, in a second, I'm sure my cameraman's going to go around and show some of the applications that have already been enabled for the Moverio, including my favorite, a DJI quadcopter. So if you've ever wanted to have the view of the quadcopter and yet have the picture from the camera, that's what they're doing here. This is great. I want to see this on our shows. I want to see this in our programs. Mike, thank you so very much for talking to us. I'll promise you I'll do my level-headed best to get this onto our programming show, and maybe you will be the next person to develop for Moverio. I want to thank the folks over at Epson for letting us play with the AR gear. You know, there actually was there were a few booths there who had some very interesting applications for those Moverio glasses. We're going to be showing you some of those videos over the next couple of episodes, just so it'll spark your imagination. Speaking of sparking your imagination, while we were at CES, one of the trends that we saw over and over again was this idea of the Internet of Things. Now, we're finally starting to get some substance into what that means, specifically the Internet of Things in your house. Now, we have talked about home automation for probably 2-3 decades now. This idea that we could control our appliances, our entryways, our doors, our windows, whatever it may be, from a single place, a single device, a single interface. Now, that's great and all, but what happens when you want one vendor on your windows and one vendor on your doors, and maybe another vendor controlling your temperature, another vendor controlling your entertainment system? Maybe you've got Samsung appliances and they don't talk to anybody else. Well, folks, that's why we're happy to have on the show Smart Things. You see, Smart Things is a smarter way to do the Internet of Things. It all starts with this. This is the Smart Things Hub. This device is what's going to allow you to communicate with all the different automation devices that you may have in your home. Now, this is CNET's highest rated home system. This is called Smart Things itself. This is the whole system. It allows you to monitor, control, and automate your home from anywhere using your smartphone. Now your lights, your locks, thermostats, and home security are all connected through a single app. You don't need a different app for every product. Their intuitive controls allow you to set the rules on your smartphone through their free iOS, Android, and Windows Phone apps. With Smart Things, you can customize the way that your smart devices talk to each other, so you can tap goodnight on your phone and all the lights will turn off. The thermostats will adjust and the doors will lock. You could set your lamps to brighten each morning at sunrise or when you want to wake up. Now, you can even keep your home protected with SmartThings with home security, motion detection, water detection, and more. And you can even enable your speakers to broadcast dogs barking if there's motion outside of the house. Set one of these cameras for the ability to take a series of photos when unwanted motion or entry is detected, and you can have your doors recognize when you are close by using one of these smart tags so it understands when you're home and it should turn itself on. Now, there's so many ways to customize your SmartThings home, but it's not just the sensors. It's that aforementioned ability to communicate with everything. This is the editor's choice of CES 2015, and I got to tell you, there's a reason for that. Because if you're looking for a smarter way to connect your home, this is it. Now, you can get started setting up your smart home right now. SmartThings is offering Know-How listeners 10% off of any home security or solutions kit, and you get free shipping in the U.S. when you go to smartthings.com/twit and use the offer code TWIT at checkout. We thank SmartThings for their support of Know-How. Boom.
Cool.
Boom. Now, let's talk a little bit about those glasses, because I was really hot and heavy. I saw those last year at CES 2014. We didn't get a chance to really get our hands on it. I mean, we played with it a tiny bit, but we couldn't film it. We ran out of time. This year, they had a whole booth in the South Hall. In the Sands Innovation Pavilion, and it was spectacular. It looked so solid. But this was all before I saw the Microsoft HoloLens.
It kind of spoiled it for you?
Different technology. Actually, Alex, I think you've got some video of that. The Microsoft HoloLens that was revealed last week, they say it's holograms. It's really just images that are projecting onto your eyes.
That's so cool, though.
Yeah, this is the concept video. So we all know that the concept videos look way cooler than it will look in reality. But the people who have actually tried this on, so journalists who have actually gotten a set of these on their head, have said it's actually really close.
I can imagine this will happen someday. It might look just like this, yeah.
Right. I mean, think about the technology you need to make this happen. First of all, you need some sort of projector, some way to project images onto your eyes. We've got those. Those are just pico projectors, little DLP chips. You need some way to recognize what's in the environment. So understand the difference between your hand and a table and a model, whatever. Microsoft is actually a leader in this because that's what the Kinect is all about. When you look at their Xbox entertainment system, the Kinect has super high resolution cameras, and they've been building up the intelligence over years. Remember, we covered a story last year of how they can actually detect your blood, your pulse rate.
A little scary.
By noticing the slight changes in the shade of your skin.
Right.
That's how high def these cameras are.
Yeah, I just got an Xbox One over Christmas, and it knows, it's projected where the floor was, and it knows the depth of like things in front of it. So I'm like in red, and then the things behind me are in blue, and then the floor was, you know, perfectly gridded out. I was like, it sees everything.
Yeah. This, I think both Epson and Microsoft are what Google Glass wanted to be. They wanted to be an overlay on top of reality. And I mean, you tried Google Glass, I tried Google Glass. It was cool.
It was cool. I can see things going in that direction, but it was a little too soon, I think. And
I wasn't ready.
The whole, like, you had to look up just to see, like, the little notification where these kind of go over your whole vision.
Right.
I don't know if you remember, but Jerry Ellsworth came in the studio, and she was showing her where they put down the material, and it had the projector that would reflect onto it.
Cast AR.
Cast AR, that's what it was. I think, didn't you kickstart it,
I
Alex?
did, yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to trying that out again.
And actually, Microsoft's technology is actually pretty close to that. But instead of projecting the image down onto the material, it's projecting it up into your eyes.
Yeah.
One of the things that I think Microsoft has over Epson in this case, even though Epson's product is shipping right now, you could buy it, you could develop for it right now, and it is spectacular. It's wonderful. It looks really good. It's really solid. But the fact that you're not putting on glasses and then having screens right here, you know, in Epson's case, it's a prism that's reflecting an image so that it overlays on top of the real world, means you're never going to have that issue where if you move your glasses, the image starts to move.
Oh, right, yeah.
Right? Like, because there's always going to be that little bit of spacing, so things don't always line up.
Yeah.
And all it takes is a little bit of wobble to break the experience of AR. But with the Microsoft approach, because it's reflecting straight onto your eyes,
when you say that,
distance.
though,
it's like, wait, you're doing what?
So there's one detail about HoloLens that people have talked about, but I don't know how many people have picked up on it. So notice what he does with his mouse here. He's got a cursor on his screen, but then he mouses to the right, and it goes onto Mars there.
That's cool.
So it goes from your computer to the HoloLens.
And then he gets
I
up
would
and looks at
totally
it.
do that. I mean, if your computer screen continued beyond the edge of your screen.
Oh yeah, and onto
into
your
the
living room. Yeah. Coming back from a civil engineering background, like that would have been so handy for moving the map around and looking at the different angles of like the streets and stuff would have been helpful.
Very helpful. One last application, and we actually did see this at the Epson booth. They were using the AR glasses as FPV goggles for Phantom. Quadcopter, which is nice
cool.
because I mean, I love the goggles. The FPV goggles are great, but the problem is they're not great when they get close to you. They're great for flying around, but once you get close, you kind of have to lift your goggles off your head because you want to see it line of sight.
Right.
If you've got it in your glasses and your glasses are just overlaid on reality,
you can pick it up
you
again.
can continue to pilot and just now you're seeing the camera here, but you're just concentrating on the quad as it comes closer and closer.
That's cool.
It's a very nice way to pilot your system.
I would volunteer to try that.
No. It's on me. On me.
Thanks.
I got a guy, Lou Maresca.
Yeah. Oh, Lou.
Yeah. I actually asked him about that. He's like, yeah, we don't have any specials on that. It's like, no. He actually told me they're limited to $1,000 a year from the Microsoft store. So that once they buy like a Surface tablet, that's it. They're done. They can't buy anything else. So
All right. Well, we better get on it. It's almost February. We gotta get some stuff from Lou.
Now, folks, I know that this has been a lot of material, especially from the Q&A. And by the way, keep those questions coming because we love answering your questions. We like doing projects. Projects are fun. In fact, we've got a ton of projects heading your way. But when we can answer your questions, it helps us to connect with what you actually want to hear. And right now, we're hearing a whole heck of a lot of quadcopter questions. So if you're sick of quadcopters, get your other questions in there so that we know that there's a few people who want to hear about things.
Especially if you have network questions, because I know Padre's been getting rusty. So
I have been really getting rusty. But don't forget that you can always get our show notes at our show page, which is where, Brian?
At twit.tv/KH, and all our prior episodes with links to all the websites we talk about, and subscribe links. We make it easy for any kind of format or way that you would like to watch the show. So
absolutely. And don't forget, you can also join our Google Plus group. We've now got over 8,000 followers there, and it's a great community. It's not just a forum for you to talk to us, but it's a forum to get your answers answered by other builders, other makers, other DIYers.
The know-it-all army, really.
It is, and it's growing. So be part of that army. Go ahead and jump in there and join. Don't forget, you could also find us on Twitter if you're not into the Google Plus thing. You can find me at twitter.com/PadreSJ. That's at PadreSJ. If you follow me there, you'll find out what we do every week for this show, plus all the other shows I do on Twit TV and also the stuff that doesn't go into the shows.
Lots of corgi pictures,
Lots of corgis.
a lot of pictures from my race weekend that I had, and I am also on Twitter at cranky_hippo.
Yeah, and don't forget Alex, our TD. You hear from him every once in a while. He sits back there with this big snark on his face and just, he threatens us a lot. You can find him at twitter.com/ANELF3. That's ANELF3. Follow him because it will make him feel bad.
The show is out of control.
Yes, it is, Brian.
He's gonna beat me with a selfie stick at one of these times too.
Brian, I think that's it, right?
Yeah, I'm
Go ahead
done.
and wrap it up. Yeah. I'm Father Robert Ballas, sir.
And I'm Brian Burnett.
And now that you know how,
Go do it.
bye-bye.